The peasant believes he knows what it takes to be a real man. "You fight!" he exclaims, and thus he walks around town, shoulders back, chest puffed out, just waiting for someone to even look at him the wrong way. His friends find it funny at first, but after a few altercations, they realize that every night out with the peasant is going to end in a fight. Slowly, they start calling him less and less. And it's not just his friends. Girls, who the peasant is mistakenly doing all this for in the first place, are also taking notice. While the peasant thinks that fighting makes him look tough and desirable, they just feel he looks weak, like anything and everything can damage his ego. Here comes the king. The king has been training Muay Thai, Krav Maga, and kickboxing for years. He knows how to fight, he knows how to defend himself, and he's prepared to use these skills if he has to. But he rarely does, because he knows how to de-escalate situations far before they even get to that point, and far before they get out of hand. And he's confident, so he doesn't feel he needs to prove himself to anyone. And thus, everyone who goes out with him feels safe. Friends, family, girls, you name it. And why? Because it's clear that he's calm and in control of every situation. And it starts with him being in control of himself. Now, it's important to realize that you are one of the people in this story, but which one? My name is Logan, and on this channel, I hope you realize that you are the king. And as such, it's time to kill the peasant mindset and be the king that you are. Today, we're talking about what it means to be a real man when it comes to fighting. And to start off, you know we have to talk about the realest man who ever lived, the one true king, Jesus. See, if you want an example of what a real man looks like, then look no further. Those of you who don't know, Jesus endured so much while he was here on the earth, but he never let anything derail him from fulfilling his purpose. He ultimately sacrificed himself, dying on a cross to save us. And there was so much pain and so much suffering on that path. And talk about being in a position where you would want to prove what you can do, when you have people mocking you and torturing you and nailing you to a cross. But let's take a look how Jesus chose to approach these situations. When one of his disciples, Peter, tried to use force to stop Jesus from being arrested, Jesus rebuked Peter, told him, "Put your sword away. Do you think I can't call on my Father and he will at once send more than 12 legions of angels?" But then, how would the scriptures be fulfilled? Kings, this is what a real man looks like. Knowing what he could do, but choosing to never waver from his purpose and not letting ego get in the way of greatness. So we need to follow this example and become real men ourselves. And knowing what to do when fights are looming is an integral part to this process. Now, there's this funny thing that happens when dudes get onto their self-improvement, or even if they're not specifically on a self-improvement journey, but they just want to become more like a real man. And so they're looking to live up to this ideologic picture of what a real man is supposed to be. And the funny thing that they do is that they end up overcompensating. So they learn things about what a real man looks like, such as he has the ability to fight, and they take this to mean that they should be trying to start fights with everybody. So guys will be out here thinking that they need to fight anybody and everybody because that's what a man is. Man fights. But in reality, it's usually little boys who think that way. The true mark of a man is being able to control his emotions. And bro, I've been waiting to do this video because I can't wait for the haters in the comments. And I can already hear you guys right now. Man, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. This ain't no king. Real men fight. And that's true. Real men do fight, but only when it's necessary. And honestly, I'll be really happy if I'm getting these hate comments because these are the people that need the video the most. So welcome in, bro. I'm here to tell you that if you think popping off at every chance you get and getting into all these fights is making you look tough, it's actually just making you look like somebody with a very fragile ego. And it's also something that's just not worth it because it's not worth your life. And this is why we often see that when people get older, they fight less because it hits them that they have more to lose. They have a wife to think about, they have kids to think about, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to protect what's most important to them. And doing whatever it takes often means having the courage and the strength to say just a few words and de-escalate a situation. Because ask yourself, what's actually harder for you? Especially if you know how to fight. Is it harder to engage in the fight, one that you think you'll win, or to walk away? What takes more strength? And look, I'm speaking to you from a place of experience because for me, It's always been the latter. It's always been much harder for me to walk away from a situation than to engage in it. I've been just like the peasant for most of my life. I was seriously always looking for a fight. I learned early on that I was a strong dude and I could win most fights, and so I'd do it. I wasn't scared of anyone or anything, and if you wanted to fight, it's your funeral. That's seriously how I thought. I thought that that was the way to be strong and to prove that you're strong. So look, I get it. I get what you might be thinking right now. And honestly, I'm so glad and thankful that nothing bad really happened from me fighting. I thank God that nobody ever pulled a gun or anything like that, because honestly, none of those altercations would have been worth my life. So what changed? How did I get out of this mindset? Well, first of all, I was convicted. My heart was convicted by that story that I told you about Jesus, in conjunction with the scriptures that say to turn the other cheek when you are wronged, meaning you don't need to engage, you don't need to fight, you don't need to strike back. As I got convicted on this, I started to try to put it into practice. I was holding my tongue, holding my fist back, and using my voice instead to control situations. And I realized how much harder that was. And honestly, this excited me. I started saying, it's easy to fight, especially when you can win. Real strength comes from stepping away even when you know what you could have done. Because there's a point that you guys really need to understand, and that's that real men don't need to prove who they are. They simply are who they are. Have you ever paid attention to the smartest guy in the room? It's one of my favorite things to observe. They may be the most qualified to give all the answers, but instead, they're the one asking all the questions. They don't have a care in the world for what they might look like or who is thinking they might be dumb. They're just concerned with making real and true progress by asking questions and learning as much as they can. Meanwhile, everybody else is spouting off all these ideas, and most of the time they don't even know what they're talking about. And it's the same thing with fighting. Oftentimes, the most capable guy in the room will avoid the fight altogether. In fact, probably the baddest dude I know is one of my Krav Maga senseis, Sensei Thomas. This guy is that classic tough biker dude. He's a millionth degree black belt in a million different martial arts, and he's been fighting in and out of the ring for decades, right? This man could literally put down anyone. Now, not long ago, my man Sensei Thomas was riding his motorcycle. He goes to merge onto the highway and he ends up having to cut it kind of close in front of this truck. The dude in the truck gets real mad, honking, flicks him off. I mean, you know how it goes. Sensei Thomas is kind of just like, all right, whatever, and just continues on. A few miles down the road, he's got to get some gas, so he pulls off the highway and parks his bike at a pump. He's pretty hungry, so he went in to get one of those hoagie sandwiches, and then he's back outside at the bike and he starts to fill it up. All of a sudden, this huge truck just barrels into the gas station, tires screeching, all that, pulls to a halt. This dude gets out of the truck and aggressively starts heading towards Sensei Thomas, right? Now, obviously, this is the same dude that was cut off earlier by my sensei. So now, if you're Sensei Thomas, you're sitting there thinking, this dude has made a grave mistake. He's coming at you and you could end him just like that. So the guy's getting closer and closer, but before anything can happen, Sensei Thomas just goes, hey man, you want a sandwich? And he holds out the hoagie that he just bought. What do you think the guy did? Of course, he stopped in his tracks. He's just like, what? And my sensei proceeds to tell him, look man, I'm sorry I cut you off earlier, but look, take this sandwich and come inside, I'll buy you a pop too. And immediately, the dude's whole demeanor changes. Before, he was so mad, so ready to fight, and it could really seem hard to calm somebody like that down. But as you can see, with a very simple gesture, Sensei Thomas was able to take him from that into a normal kind of dude, accepting the apology, saying it's all good, and they head inside for a pop. Now, obviously, Sensei Thomas could have put this man down, but he wasn't sitting there worried about trying to prove anything. Often, if you're somebody that's looking to prove yourself through a fight all the time, you're likely fairly insecure and very early in your self-improvement journey. And that's okay, but just make an effort to start understanding where true strength comes from. Now, I want to finish off with a very important point, and this is one that should be fairly obvious if you've been paying attention to the video. And that is, does all this mean that you shouldn't know how to fight? Absolutely not. You need to know how to fight. Just because I'm advocating for stopping fights before they begin, it doesn't mean that you don't need to know what to do if it comes to it. That guy that Sensei Thomas cut off would have ignored the de-escalation attempts and raised the fist to fight, Sensei Thomas would have put him down. And more importantly, he would have been prepared to put him down. So please, do learn to fight as a man so that you can protect yourself and your loved ones. I personally train Krav Maga because I believe it is the best self-defense in the world. But Muay Thai, kickboxing, etc., those are good too. Just make sure it's something that you will stick with. So look, King, I hope that by now you understand that fighting isn't always the answer and it's not always the strong thing. It can oftentimes make you look a lot weaker, like you're trying to protect a fragile ego. So please, next time you get into an altercation, look to de-escalate the situation instead. Now, if you got anything from the video, please drop it a like and subscribe to the channel. I'd love to have you in the family. And now it's time for me to serve as your reminder. Always put the work in, and from there, leave it in the hands of the one true king. Stay kingly.